You are live now.
Okay. And Harmeet ji, is it?
I can hear you, but I'm
Is
coming in
he?
now. Yes.
Okay. Okay, I'll just start. So, hello and good evening, everyone, and welcome to yet another live session by Xcel Global Services. Your one stop for all your visas, migration, and education needs. So, introducing myself, I'm Alishma Shrestha, and I'm working as a student counselor at Xcel Global Services. So, before starting the session, I'd just like to thank the whole team of MelbourneMAMA for making this happen and always supporting us. So, today's session will be mainly focusing on South Australia and their recent migration updates and their state nomination. And we'll also be discussing about their skilled occupation list. And to do this, we have with us our very own registered migration agent, Mr. Harmeet Uppal from Future Migration. So he'll be discussing and providing you information about all that you need to know about South Australia. So, and also, if you guys have any questions related to South Australia and its migration and the state nomination, please feel free to drop in your questions so that we can answer them. Meanwhile, Harmeet ji will be talking about South Australia and the changes in the migration. So, yeah, without further ado, I'd like to request Harmeet ji to start with the session. Yes, Harmeet.
Good evening, everyone. I hope you can hear me well. If you cannot, please let us know, and I'll either fix my mic or the volume that we're up to. So we'll start today's session. I hope you all doing well, safe, and sound inside in the lockdown. So it'd be a lockdown session. We'll do a session on South Australian state nomination requirements and the list that's recently came out, been updated by South Australia, and we'll discuss some of the important topics uh, in the South Australian state nomination requirement and the points which would apply to you or not, but we'll be able to help you with your queries. If not, we'll be able to help you with the queries once you send in after this session.
Yeah.
South Australian. I'll start with the figures that came out from South Australia. South Australia's got was given a quota of seats, which was for 190 for subclass 190. They have 2,600 seats, and it's very similar to the 491 subclass. So they've equally distributed their 2,600 and 2,600 seats for subclass 190 and subclass 491. Subclass 190, as we all know, I won't go into much detail of that because I believe that majority of the students or people who are watching this session, I think they've got a good understanding of what subclass 190 is. It's a permanent visa, and subclass 491 is a temporary visa leading to a permanent visa after you fulfill the requirements of a permanent visa, of the next permanent visa, which is 191. So we'll start with what the state has to offer. So looking at the requirements that came out recently, there's a big list, bigger than all the other states. South Australia's came out with the occupations that other states would not have not came out with or would not think about, or like they haven't came up with these occupations before, but they've got a big number of occupations on their list at this stage. So you can go through the occupation list on the South Australian website itself. It'll give you a clear picture of what occupations are included in the occupation list, and if your occupation is in the list, what are the requirements that you've got to meet. We'll touch base on each of those requirements. We'll try to touch base on each of those requirements, and if you're not able to cover it today, you can give us a call or send us a text or an email, and we'll be able to send you through a query answer for the query that you put in. All righty. Okay. So we'll start with the nomination requirement. So as we all know, state nomination normally requires you either living or working in the state, in that certain state. So does South Australia. It's not any different. So it's very similar to that. So I'll just run through the requirements quickly, and then we'll come back and and go through the details of each and every requirement, where we can address the main points of the requirement. Residency. So South Australia is nominating you at this stage if you are living and working in South Australia. So point number one, if you're living and working, you're eligible for the 190 and the 491. Depends on the time frame that you've lived or worked in South Australia, and if you meet that requirement, which we'll go through in the next couple of minutes. So so residency requirement. If you are not currently residing in South Australia, you can still be eligible for the talent and innovator employment stream. It's a different stream that the South Australian department came up with. So if you're not living in South Australia, that stream would be something that you'll be looking at. For all the other applicants, you'll be looking at specifically, you will have to live and work in South Australia. If you're currently residing offshore, there are a few occupations that they've opened for offshore candidates. So it's a good news for offshore people. You will have to register your interest. However, you will have to register your interest to get the nomination application moving. So you'll put in a registration of interest, and then depending on your occupation, your experience, and your skills, the state government will decide whether to give you an invite for nomination application. Age, as we all know, age has to be under 45 at the time of nomination. Occupation, the occupation must be on the South Australian skill occupation list. You need a skill assessment in that occupation. So if one of the occupations that you choose in the list, the first thing you might have to do is get a skill assessment in that list. Get a skill assessment in that occupation. Yes, the skill assessment cannot be one that is expired or you need to renew it. It's normally 3 years or whatever it says on your skill assessment, depending on this assessing body. Work experience. I'm just going through the requirements quickly. I'll point out which ones we'll go through in depth with. So work experience. You must meet the requirement of the state nomination department. You must meet the requirement of your occupation. So if you click onto your occupation on the list, it'll actually give you an indication of how long do they want you to be working and living in that area for you to be nominated for 190 or the 491 subclass. So it's majority of the occupations that I went through a heap of them, and majority of the occupations cover employment anywhere between 12 months and 24 months. Some of them have the requirement of 6 months, but the 6 months requirement is majoritarily towards the regional SA, towards the regional South Australia. So if you're living in outer regional South Australia and you've been there for 6 months, you've been working in your occupation or in any occupation, you need to have a look into whether you meet your criteria or not, because the nomination department has an option of where some of the occupations meet the requirement, even though the applicant is not working in the field of nominated occupation. So you still might be eligible. You'll have to look into it. Okay. I'll just briefly give you the next step. English, you must meet the requirement, competent English, which is a requirement by the State Department. So in order to get nominated, you still need to meet the requirement of Department of Home Affairs, other than the state nomination requirement. So English is one of them. So you gain points by getting higher points in English. Minimum points, obviously you'll have to look into meeting the minimum points for the state nomination. So for 491, minimum points are 50 because the state gives you 15 points. For the 190, the minimum points are 60 because the state gives you 5 points for that. And available nomination streams we'll discuss in detail. This is a section that we'll go through in detail. There are 3 nomination streams that SA has came up with this time. So they came up with Talent and Innovators Program, currently working in South Australia, International Graduates of South Australia. So these are the 3 streams that they would nominate candidates from. And the last criteria would be your expression of interest. So your expression of interest should be saying that if you allocating a state, if you saying that which state you'd want to go for, it should be saying South Australia or any. If it's saying any, then it should be allocated towards South Australia for them to choose your EOI, for them to select your EOI for the invite. Any other point? Okay. Yes, I'll just scroll back up and then we'll run through the details of the residency. We'll run through the details of the 3 streams that we've discussed. We'll start with the point 1, where we were with the residency requirements. Sorry, I just want to ask you if it's clear, if I'm clear, if you can hear me, if there's any issues.
I'm able to hear you, Harmeet. Let me just
okay.
Check.
If that's good, we can continue.
Yeah.
We can.
Oh, just a sec. I think.
Yes. Okay.
Guys,
sorry, Alishma.
Yeah, just a sec.
Okay.
I think we're good to go.
You're good to go?
Yeah, we can continue, Harmeet.
Okay. We'll go back to that to the residency where we discussed that people who are not currently residing in South Australia can apply by the Talent and Innovator Employment stream. Now, the Talent and Innovator Employment stream it's for highly skilled migrants who are working for South Australian business. So under this stream, if you're not in South Australia, you can still apply. If you're not living in South Australia at this stage, you can still apply and be eligible to get a state nomination approved under this stream. So and the other ones, we'll discuss them now. Under the Talent and Innovator Program, employment scheme for highly skilled migrants who are living and working in South Australia for a South Australian business, outer regional South Australian workforce stream. So for applicants, for people who are working in the outer regional South Australian businesses are eligible to apply as well. So you need to, if you think that you're not eligible, you can put in a submission for consideration. If you think that you do not meet the criteria, you can still put in a submission for consideration by the department. Startup and small business stream is one of the streams under the innovation and under the Talent and Innovator Program. So startup and small business is for people who recently either started up or are running a small business in South Australia. For students or for temporary graduate visa holders who are running their own businesses in South Australia, it's for those people. High performing graduate stream for graduates who have completed their qualification from a South Australian institute and have performed extremely well in their qualification. Independent talent stream for high caliber applicants seeking state nomination. So if you think that you do fall under one of these streams, you are still eligible to apply. So you can apply through the Talent and Innovator Program. The next one that we'll be discussing the next stream that we'll be discussing will be the. Sorry, give me one sec. Currently working in South Australia. So people who are currently working in South Australia are the next big stream. Sorry, give me 1 second, please. Okay, yes, I'm on the screen now. Yeah, so people who are currently living and working in South Australia, there are concessions and waivers available for them. The department has, so normally if you go in your occupation, it'll say if you've been living and working here for 12 months or 24 months or 12 and 6. But then again, there are some exceptions to that. There are some waivers to that and some concessions to that for people who are already living there. And if you think that you qualify for that, you can apply. If you're living and working in South Australia, so when I say working, the work requirement that the South Australian government department wants is post-study, 20 hours per week or 40 hours a fortnight in your nominated or closely related occupation. So if it's prescribed, if it's given that you should be working in your nominated occupation, or they want you to be working in your nominated or closely related occupation, you will have to satisfy the requirement of 20 hours per week or 40 hours per fortnight. And your nominated occupation itself would be for South Australian state nomination only. We would say they would consider anything within the 2 ANSCO digit level. So if you fall under the category, if you fall under the same skill but with a different skill, fall under the same skill criteria but with a different occupation, sorry, you can be nominated still. Sorry. Yes. Where were we? Okay, so we were on the closely related occupation. Yeah, we were discussing the closely related occupation. Sorry, just got a bit of a cough and a itch in the throat. Sorry.
That's all right, Harmeet. Take your time.
Okay, coming back to I'm so sorry about that. It's been I've just got this silly cough from the last couple of days. All right, if you're applying for a subclass 491, the minimum requirement that we saw was 6 months of work in South Australia, and it could be specified whether they would want you to be working in outer regional or the Greater Adelaide. So they have specified in their occupation list. In each occupation, there's the specification right there. If the minimum requirement is 6 months for the 491, the minimum requirement for 190 is 12 months, unless specified otherwise. So very rarely you'd get a 190 application approved below the 12-month mark, unless you are exempt from that work experience. People who are exempt from the work experience, people who've been living in and working in South Australia, some of the categories are exempt. So if you're currently residing and working for the last 12 months in outer regional South Australia in any occupation, does not has to be your nominated occupation. So if you're working in any occupation, you may be eligible for a 491 visa nomination. And the same goes for if you living and working in outer regional South Australia for the last 24 months, you may be eligible for a 190 visa nomination as well. And these requirements, as I said, it can be any occupation, does not have to be a skilled occupation or your nominated occupation. So it very clearly says that people, this was not there before, like in the last year's requirements. That's a big change. So people who were working in different fields were not eligible, but this time they are, with the 12 to 24 months requirement. If they meet this requirement, they'll be able to apply. So if you're working anywhere in any field, in the outer regional South Australia, you will be eligible for 190 or a 491 subclass if you've been there for 12 to 24 months. Then again, if you're currently residing and working in outer regional South Australia and you're unable to meet these requirements, you can still submit a registration of interest for the Talent and Innovator program. As we've discussed previously, it has, again, another 5 streams. Depends on your caliber, your skill, and the occupation that you choose, whether you'll be eligible for that. Okay. Living and working in SA as a long-term resident. Sorry. Yeah. Living and working in South Australia as a long-term resident. People, students who've been there, students who've studied there are former graduates or their partners are eligible in this section, will be eligible to apply if you've resided continuously in South Australia for last 3 years. So people who've had their qualification, even former graduates who have had are pass outs of South Australian institutes and have been living there for last 3 years can apply for the state nomination application now. The requirements are you currently working for the last 12 months in South Australia in a skilled occupation that is not your nominated occupation. So it can be skill level 1, 2, 3 or skill level 4 in carers and aides occupations. So you can work in any skill 1, 2, or 3 level. So skill levels are defined by each. Say each occupation has a certain skill level. You might have to look up your occupation if you're not sure. You got to look up which skill level your occupation falls under before you can apply this. But we'll be able to help you if you come down to. If you have a question, send us in, and we'll be able to help you with that. But if you're not sure, I think Australian Bureau of Statistics or ABS is the website that you can go on to check the skill level, or you can check your skill level on ANSCO as well. Okay. While you must be currently working in a skilled occupation in SA, 12 months skilled work experience can be gained over the last 3 years. So if you're not working directly in the last year, the skilled experience could be, or the 12-month skilled work that we need can be covered in the last 3 years. So you do not have to work continuously in the last 12 months of your 3-year living there. It could, you can make it up within the last 3 years. Your 12-month work experience needs to be 20 hours per week or 40 hours per fortnight. As we've discussed before, you'll be able to, accommodate with 20 hours per week or 40 hours per fortnight after the post-qualification, the work experience. If you recently commenced working in your nominated or closely related occupation, but have 12 months on your work experience in other skilled occupation, you're still eligible to apply. The same goes for category 2, temporary visa holders. Number 1 was the former graduates and their partners. Number 2 is other temporary visa holders. Other temporary visa holders will have to show 5 years of living. So 5 years of residing in South Australia. That's when you're considered as a long-term resident. Some of the requirements are very similar to the former partner requirements, former partner or former graduate requirements. So you are currently working for last 12 months in South Australia in a skilled occupation that's not your nominated occupation, skill level 1 to 3. Again, must be 20 to 40 hours. Okay. The common exception is, the common point here is lower skilled occupants such as cleaners, drivers, kitchen hand are not eligible. So when we did say skilled occupation, if you're working in any skilled occupation, some of the lower skilled occupations such as cleaners, drivers, kitchen hand are still not eligible. Okay. These both the categories, both the criterias would be met for a 491 application. So in both the cases, you'll be eligible for 491 application. Okay, sorry, give me 1 second. Okay. Option number 3, Safe Haven Enterprise visa holders. So it's very similar, 5 years for a Safe Haven Enterprise. Should be living, working for not last 12 months, should be working for at least 12 months. And the 12 months, the work experience has to be 20 hours per week or 40 hours per fortnight. You're eligible for a 491 nomination in this one as well. So only in section 1, where we discussed if you're a former international graduate of South Australia or a partner of an international graduate of South Australia, you'll be eligible for 491. And in the last bit of it, so they can consider you for a 190 under this section if you're making more than $80,000 a year. In the same section, if you can show that you're making more than $80,000 a year, you will be considered for a 190 nomination as well. Okay, I think we've got one more left. Sorry, how are we running with the time?
It's
Alishma, do we have any questions on this section? Mm-hmm.
No, I don't think so. Guys, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop in some so that Harmeet ji can answer them for you. Yeah.
I think our last section was the international graduates of South Australia.
Yeah.
So for to be eligible as an international graduate of South Australia, you have to fulfill again certain requirements. Your South Australian course must be CRICOS registered with a minimum of 46 weeks, a minimum of 50% of your qualification must have been completed in SA. You must have resided in SA for at least 1 year during your period of study. You must have continuously resided in SA post-course completion. You must meet the Department of Home Affairs, the requirements and the points for the Department of Home Affairs for subclass 491 and 190. You must meet the nomination requirements, as we've discussed previously, the actual requirements. You must meet any course requirements or minimum qualification level listed for your occupation. South Australian graduates must meet the specific work requirement listed for their nominated occupation unless specified differently for your occupation. South Australian graduates do get the concession as well. Research work undertaken as a part of your PhD will not be accepted as skilled work experience. So for people who completed a PhD course, the research work, they wouldn't consider that as your skilled work experience if there is a work experience requirement on your occupation. High performing graduates of South Australia can submit a registration of interest in the Talent and Innovators program. Where specified, some occupations may require longer work experience. I believe for people living in South Australia, where we've gone through a few occupations, we cannot go through all the occupations. What I'll do is I'll go through a couple of occupations after this so that we can have a understanding of when I say that you'd probably be required to show lesser work experience. You'd be so they'd want you to give them 6 months to 12 months of work experience rather than for other candidates who are not South Australian graduates. They'll have to show a higher duration of work and living commitment. So for the purpose of state nomination, as we've discussed previously, ANSCO digits, the first 2 digits, if they're same, you'd be considered closely related occupation. Research work undertaken as a part of your, we've already discussed that, would not be considered. And again, work experience is 20 hours per work experience that is considered as skilled work would be 20 hours per week or 40 hours per fortnight. and it depends on whether they require you to do that in your nominated occupation or in any occupation. Uh, Work experience waivers, again, I think we've touched base with a majority of them. The waivers that were available were for the Talent and Innovator program. You had South Australian graduates, high performing graduates, and their previous graduates and their partners who have resided in South Australia with the long term eligibility can meet this criteria as well. We'll run through a few common occupations just to give you a better understanding, because I know it's a lot of information. It only makes sense. It only makes sense if we can give you an example of this. Okay, I think the majority of our students would be interested in looking up some of the few famous occupations or some of the common occupations. We'll go through them. Sorry, just bear with me. I'm trying to work out on that page. Okay, we'll run through. For example, we'll go through the requirements of ICT business analyst. ICT business analyst for a 190. Currently working in your nominated occupation or closely related occupation for last 24 months in Greater Adelaide or last 12 months in outer regional South Australia. So this is I'll just let you know on what page I am. I'm on the occupation list in the South Australian State Nomination Department's homepage, and then we went on to the occupation list. We went on to search the ICT business analyst, and then under the business analyst section, you'll be able to see that. So this is the eligibility criteria that they've set for a 190 subclass 190, 24 months in Greater Adelaide or 12 months in outer regional South Australia. When you click onto that outer regional South Australia, it'll give you the postcodes if you're not sure whether you're still in the Greater Adelaide section or the outer regional South Australian section. Subclass 490, they'd want you to work 12 months for a 491, sorry, not 490, 491. They'll want you to work in your nominated occupation or closely related occupation for last 12 months or 6 months in outer regional South Australia. So there you see the relaxation there. Again, 6 months is the period, is a short period, and also is the period for you to be eligible for a 491 occupation if you can find work in an outer regional South Australian postcode. And so occupation with the same skill assessing authority are closely related occupations. In other words, if you've got an occupation, if you've got a skill assessment with ACS, it would be considered as closely related occupation by the State Department for SA, because it's still under the same skill assessing authority. So you can there's a chance that you can get some benefit out of this. Available through Talent and Innovator program. Exemptions are available for applicants living and working in outer regional South Australia. As we've discussed previously in our exemption or concessions, that if you were working in outer regional South Australia, you'd be eligible if you're working in any occupation for 12 months to 24 months, 12 months for a 491, 24 months for a 190. South Australian graduates they have a criteria which is slightly lower than the criteria that we've discussed before. For a 190, they'd have to show they've been working in their nominated or closely related occupation for last 12 months in Greater Adelaide and last 6 months in the outer regional SA. For 491, currently working in your nominated or closely related occupation for last 3 months. So there's a difference. We can already see what we pointed out before was that South Australian graduates have a huge advantage of over the other candidates. But in saying that, uh, I would put more focus on, if you are someone who's coming out of their temporary graduate visa, their visa is expiring soon, and you're looking for options for permanent residency, you can discuss your case on a case-by-case basis with us, and we can help you guide through. If you are a student who's finishing their study, who's completed their study, and are looking for state nomination uh, in Victoria or any other state, and you're looking for a state nomination from South Australia, we can look into that as well and guide you through with the pathway that suits you best, depending on your circumstances. So I would put in more stress about people whose degrees are completing, who've completed their study, for them and for people who are coming out of their temporary visas. Would be You guys should look into this and see if you can get any benefit of moving to South Australia under these categories. This is not So the ICT business analyst is not open for offshore candidates. So, and again, for South Australian graduate pathway, if you apply through the Talent and Innovators program, if you've done a PhD or master degree, you do not need work experience here in this category. If your GPA, or if you've got a GPA of 5.0 or higher in a master degree, and a proficient English overall or higher, first class honors in a dedicated honors year, and a proficient English overall, GPA of 5.0 with higher in bachelor degree or proficient English overall, at least superior English. So that these were the few points that they've picked up if you wanting to still apply under the Talent and Innovators program as a South Australian graduate pathway. You do not need any work experience in this field if you're applying through this stream. So we went through the requirements of a business analyst. I can go through the requirements for as an accountant.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people who'd want to
know about accounting. Yeah.
want to know about this one. Yes. So very similar to the ICT business analyst. So for a 491, you need to be working in your occupation or closely related occupation for last 24 months in Greater Adelaide, 12 months in outer regional South Australia. So only 491 eligibility, 190 eligibility is through the Talent and Innovators program. So it's a bit tough for accountants. You have an easy pathway through the 491 in SA. 190 eligibility, it says you can only apply if you fall under one of those categories under the Talent and Innovators program. So again, there are exemptions if you're living in outer regional South Australia. Those exemptions apply to you again. So and South Australian graduate pathway, you do have the very similar 491 eligibility by working for 12 months in Greater Adelaide and last 6 months in the outer regional South Australia. That is if you are a South Australian graduate. So this is what I'm doing is I'm looking into the requirements right under the occupation list by clicking onto that occupation and then checking through what the basic requirements are. And then each requirement we can go through further and see if there's any exemptions or any concessions applicable to your occupation, and if there are, then we can take the benefit of that. I think we've covered most of the South Australian skilled migration pathway today for the subclass 491 and 190. If we've not discussed your occupation and you do want to discuss your case with us, feel free to give us a call on the numbers given on the screen, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask us now or send us any comments or any queries on the screen here. Thank you.
So let me check if we have any questions.
Yes, please. Leshma, I think we didn't get any questions. Yep, we've got it all good. Okay, so I believe we didn't get any questions today. Probably.
But for people who will watch this later, you can give us a call
Yes.
on the number given on the screen anytime, and we are here to help you. So yeah, thank you, Harmeet, for your time and for this informative session.
Thank you. You're welcome. Yeah. Thank you, everyone, and hopefully we'll hear from you guys. I think either we did not catch a lot of audience, or probably.
So